welcome back to another video. Today we're going to see some spectacular chess from Nodirbek Abdusattorov. And the bad news for Gukesh, the actual world champion that had a really bad day at the 7th round of the Tata Steel Chess 2026. He was playing such a solid opening, but then he left the rook and Abdu took it as some sacrifice or something, but this was awesome to watch. We have never seen before a world champion that has left the rook hanging like this. And let's continue the video. e4, so Nodirbek Abdusattorov with the white pieces, Gukesh with the black pieces. So Gukesh, as I said, goes for the solid opening of the Ruy Lopez. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4. So this is one of the main lines for the Ruy Lopez. There are like a couple of continuations. Black can go b5 and bishop b3, or he can simply continue developing with knight f6 or bishop b7 and castle. Here he chose to go with knight f6, which is as all of us have learned as we were beginners, that we need to develop first our knights. So white castles here, bishop b7, regular developing moves, and then bishop c6. This is the very first surprise for me. So Abdu is choosing the line of the delayed exchange variation in the Ruy Lopez. Why is it delayed? Because when we played bishop b5, remember, black played a6. At that moment, white could have taken the knight because the knight was already on c6. That was the exchange variation. But here, since white went first to a4, and then after that he took on c6, then it's the delay variation, okay? So d c6, white does this because he wants to double pawns, which is considered somehow of a static advantage for the very ending of the game. But of course we're just in the opening, so here we cannot exploit any weakness at all. So knight d7 here, white goes knight c3. He played knight d7 here because he wanted to support the e5 pawn, and of course he's going backwards, right? But the elite players know exactly when to go back. They're like expert, they're grandmasters, the best players in the world, so definitely they know what they're doing. Here we see knight c3 activating the pieces. Black castle, the bishop a3, rook e8, a4. This move is gaining some space. a5, black does not want white to go any further. King h1. So when you see a move like king h1, you think, okay, what is he planning? Is he planning to go rook g1, push g4, push h4, h5, g5? You may think some of this. This is a scary move because there's nothing in this diagonal that white can be afraid of. Okay, so we'll see. We'll find out what plans were for Abdusattorov. So bishop d6 makes a lot of sense. It's freeing the rook on e8 so he can defend all of his pieces and have harmony in his position. Knight e2, knight f8, knight g3. This is standard stuff for the Ruy Lopez, which you bring all of your knights to f3 and g3, or you can actually reroute the knight to d2 and then c4. You have active pieces in the center, so we must control d4 here, okay? Of course we can fight for e5, a4, c4, and b4. That's our plan right now. So c5 is preventing to control d4 on the white side, so knight d2. This is the plan I told you earlier, which we may go to c4. Knight d6 makes a lot of sense, bringing the knight to the center, probably eyeing the d4 square, which is a nice outpost for a knight. But as of right now, it's not a good move because the knight can easily be kicked out. Yeah, so he goes, let's see here, if he, okay, knight f5, and then if he goes here, we can simply kick the knight away. Yes, so he has to go back, and this is a waste of time. It's actually helping white. So every time you move a piece into an outpost, make sure that there's no pawn that can easily take away your knight. Okay, kick away. So bishop f8, knight c4, f6, queen g4. This is where things get interesting here. White is really active and black is a bit of in a passive position. But of course we're watching the world champion play, so definitely he'll know how to defend his position. Yes. So king h8, he's getting out of that file, so he does not want any trouble. Queen g3, b6, defending c5, a4, b6. b6 is actually kicking the knight away. But of course the only possible square for the knight is at h6. Still, of course, it's defended with the bishop in e3. So he does exactly that. At h6, queen d7. This is eyeing to come to this diagonal with power with the bishop and the queen, which is a battery. Knight g4. So now knight g4 is actually threatening to take on f6 and probably then taking the rook or the queen. But of course, Gukesh defends properly and goes bishop g7, which is a good move. Now f3 is putting more defenders to the knight on g4 in case this knight goes away. The knight will still be defended because of the queen and the bishop. That's actually a battery attacking the knight. So that's prophylaxis. You need to think ahead of the plans your opponent might have. Bishop a6. Somehow, move. He had to move, right? So b3, rook d8, h5. Okay. So what Abdusattorov is trying to do here is trying to open files. This right here, he can of course take the pawn if he'll win a pawn, but we might go with the knight to h6, and the knight probably wants to come to f5, which is a sweet spot for the knight. Here black takes, knight h6, we're planning to go to f5, but of course black is uncomfortable with that plan, and he took first on c4, which is interesting. This knight, Gukesh did not like the idea of the knight continuing to live, because he probably will think, okay, the knight could come to somehow e2, the play e4, and then comes to f3, h4, and in fact we'll have two knights there. Right? Okay, so bc, bishop takes h6, bishop takes h6, rook g8, we need to move the queen, queen h2, rook g6, queen takes h5. Okay, but you may think knight f4 is attacking my queen and making it like really uncomfortable, right? However, if he goes knight f4, I'll definitely chew that knight right away. Yes. So knight f4 is what happened. Bishop takes e4, ef4, g4. This is an interesting move. Some of us will never think ahead of this move because it's a bit uncomfortable to see this. Because we have a whole rook that can be spy, we have a queen that's here, we have a potential rook that might swing to the g8 square. However, this is a great move. Why? Because if he does not go on Pasar, we have this beautiful structure for white which cannot be attacked right now. And if he takes, which is what happened, we just go king g2, okay? If queen d4, we defend with rook e1, and we can later on go rook h1 and then attacking the h7 square. So this is what happened: king g2, queen d4, rook e1, king g7, e5. e5 is a move that says, okay, let me open lines for my rooks. My rooks are just hitting their own pawns, so I want to open lines for them. e5. Rook h6, queen g4 check. This is where Gukesh had the chance to exchange queens and accept that he's only trying to get a draw here because there's nothing else. This pawn, yes, it's advanced and everything, but it's a full weakness. This is a friend pawn for white. it's doing nothing. So Gukesh thought, okay, I don't want to exchange queens, I just move the rook and defend my king. White has the chance to take out this queen, but of course black will go rook takes d4, and black is somehow active because the rook depends on g3, and the other rook can swing to h4 and then flip pursuits, but like h2. Alright, so here white Abdusattorov goes queen f5. Queen f5 is eyeing the f6 square, which is now only defended by the rook. And this is where extremely bad things happen for Gukesh. He goes rook g5, which is a huge blunder. Why is it a blunder? You can pause the video and try to find it out. I hope you did. And now we'll see this marvelous move, which is queen f6. Queen f6 check. And Gukesh will have to go king g8, and then we'll just go queen takes g5, and we're like a whole rook out. And of course, Gukesh, the current world champion, just resigned this position. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. See you in the next one. Have a good one. Give it a thumbs. Subscribe to the channel. Thank you.